Evan asked me to update my Living Wish Lands deck, and given how much you all loved that video and how awesome that video was, I figured this was the best possible way to start off post-grief banning content. Hello folks, Phil Gallagher, aka ThrabenU here for some post-banning content. And while I'm a little sad that Psychic Frog did not get banned alongside Grief, I am very excited to be playing Magic again with a card that I really enjoy. Lumra Bellow of the Woods. So in what was most certainly my best video of the year, we piloted a Living Wish Lumra land destruction stacks build to victory, and it was a lot of fun. So let's take a look at what this deck list started like for the last video, and then I'll show you what I'm going to change to update it. The deck list started as a spicy one, and it's going to remain spicy. Now, the original build was a Giganta build, and I don't really think the Giganta was necessary in the previous league, and honestly, I forgot about it sometimes when I could have played it. The thing that was critical in the league was just having a billion different ways to destroy our opponent's mana, so that kind of no matter what the draw was, we would have some sort of Wasteland effect to start constraining our opponent's resources from early on. And once we constrain our opponent's resources, cards like the Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale become better than they normally would be. Maze of Ith is something that we have identified as a powerful card against things like Psychic Frog. Preventing that damage from going through while also preventing a card draw is pretty hot. Criticisms of the previous deck list were that the Giganta was probably unnecessary. Adding the white into the Living Wish plan for the sideboard meant that we had to run a Basic Plains, and Basic Plains wasn't casting some of this stuff. We had a very large number of ETB tapped lands. So if you take a look at the number of lands that actually cast a turn 1 exploration or a turn 1 burgeoning, it was such a small number. Keeping that in mind, I went back to the drawing board and I made the difficult decision to get rid of Sunken Citadel. While it is very powerful alongside Field of Ruin and Demolition Field in particular, and can occasionally do something cute with cycling multiple Tranquil Thickets at the same time, I'm not sure if our success in the league was really reliant on this. So here is our updated version. In terms of the spells, the deck has changed very little, but one of the biggest things I wanted to do was increase my turn 1 consistency. So ignoring the Tranquil Thickets, we now have 12 turn 1 mana sources that will let us play an Exploration or a Burgeoning, which is much better. Now, this is going to make our Demolition Fields and our Field of Ruins slightly slower. I think that is ultimately going to be okay, because we would want to be using initial land drops for things like Wasteland a decent portion of the time anyway. I think this is ultimately going to be all right. I started doing half measures where I was playing like 2 of them, and ultimately I decided getting a couple of utility lands into the deck list at the expense of some of this speed was probably good. This being in the main deck as a 2 of instead of a 1 of opens up a sideboard slot, which is going to be really important for reasons that I'll talk about in a second. And I added 1 win condition to the deck list, a single Urza's Saga. I didn't really have trouble closing games previously, but I don't think I mind this as a way to tutor for a Vexing Bauble, and just having a recursive win condition or the grindy control decks, like the bug decks, the up the beanstalk decks that I might expect to see in this metagame, sounds good to me. As far as our sideboard goes, I have eliminated the white, replacing Lauren with Reclamation Sage. I've gotten rid of the Giganta Companion and a couple of the weaker sideboard slots to play a playset of Thorn of Amethyst. A big problem with this deck list is that if we are playing against generic creature light or creature-less combo, Drop of Honey does nothing, Maze of Ith does nothing, and so at a minimum, assuming that we want to get rid of Drop of Honey, Maze of Ith, and Tabernacles, we need to board in like 10 cards. So just having some generically strong anti-combo cards is important. Unfortunately, the anti-combo cards are really awkward in our shell. If we play something like Mindbreak Trap, that gets countered by Vexing Bauble. If we play something like Thorn of Amethyst, that can increase the cost of 0 cost spells to 1, meaning that Vexing Bauble no longer counters them. So there's an awkward dance that has to be done here in terms of what sideboard cards am I actually playing. You're going to be a little bit unhappy more or less no matter what. I'm deciding to make my bed with Thorn and call that good. This could be Sphere of Resistance just as easily. If you want to deviate from the mono green here and you put white sources into the deck, specifically turn 1 white sources, Deafening Silence would be like the perfect card, but our mana base really doesn't support that. So yeah, let's see how the updated Lumra Living Wish Lands deck fares. We'll see if I've made it better or worse. And if you want some cards for this, you know, a couple Tabernacles, 3, 4 Tabernacles, whatever, consider checking out my sponsor, TOAMagic.com. Tales of Adventure treats me really well as a YouTuber. They treat you really well as a customer. You always get free shipping, and if you place an order online for a major event, you can just pick it up on site. Promo code ThrabenU will even save you a little bit on your order. Let's battle. The first opening hand is an awkward one here. We don't have turn 1 green. We have turn 2 green. We could turn 1 Vexing Bauble and have an awkward turn 2. Oh, opponent's a fan of the channel. Good luck, buddy. All right, what are we doing? Am I keeping this? It just feels a little awkward. I'm gonna not. This hand I think is perfectly fine, and we decide if we're keeping Tranquil Thicket or Forest number 3. I don't think Forest number 3 adds a lot to what's going on here. We have turn 1, cycle, try to find something actively strong to do on turn 2. Otherwise, we still have valid turn 2 plays, but not insane plays. Turn 2 Wasteland is fine. Turn 2 Urza Saga into Living Wish, if we know what we already want, is fine. Lumra Landsmere, you've got a Hierarch. I'll cycle a land. Vexing Bauble, probably not the strongest against this start here. Boseiju. We need to think pretty far ahead here if I am going to cast Living Wish right now. I could also just like Living Wish for a Tabernacle immediately, and that's probably good against the Mana Dork deck. Let's do that. That was not my intended plan for this turn, but it's probably annoying even if I telegraph that. It'll make the Urza Saga plan that we are intending to do later a little bit worse, and you could make an argument that I should Wasteland on my turn off the basic forest, instead of the basic forest rather, that I can Wasteland plus Tabernacle in the same turn cycle. I think this is ultimately going to be okay. Burgeoning. Storm is 2. Tabernacle. But now each one of these creatures is going to be destroyed unless our opponent pays that cost. Now, my opponent can like float mana with Noble Hierarch, sack to White of the Reliquary, and that is a way to approach this current situation. They are just keeping their creatures for now. This is a land onto the battlefield tapped. Okay, so Burgeoning is happening. I don't have other things to do with my mana right now. I'm going to Wasteland Gaia's Cradle on my own turn, probably. I think I'll go ahead and put my Urza Saga into play. Putting a land into play means that I can cycle the Vexing Bauble. Oh. We're so close to greatness here. Problem is my opponent can just get a new Gaia's Cradle. Exalted triggers are gonna do some work here. I'll take 4. I'll go ahead and cycle this. Ghost Quarter. Drop of Honey. So the immediate play here is this. And if my opponent activates this end of turn for a new Gaia's Cradle, I'm going to Boseiju that Gaia's Cradle, which means I almost never end up activating Urza's Saga here. I think I am accordingly okay with playing Drop of Honey, and then we'll kind of see what happens. All according to plan. Gaia's Cradle. Goodbye, Gaia's Cradle. My opponent gets a Surveil 1 out of this, and they like their card. I'm going to always yield to all of these things. We're not responding to these Tabernacle triggers, and yeah. All right, we have a land. I will put the Ghost Quarter into play. That's fine. That just gives me a little bit more agency on my own turn if I draw something else cool. We're looking for like a Maze of Ith, Life from the Loam, Winding Way, that sort of stuff. So the Drop of Honey is a little awkward here now that multiple White of the Reliquaries are in play, because it ends up actually kind of helping my opponent out. If we ignore the exalted portion of the equation, one of these creatures dying adds 2 power, whereas Exalted triggers add 1. We now destroy the creature with the least power. I can pick here, seems like Ignoble Hierarch is probably better. A Wasteland, sure. This is just gonna gain me a little bit of life. I get a Vexing Bauble that allows me to essentially cantrip at some point, probably next turn. So I maybe don't Wasteland immediately. Yeah, I maybe don't Wasteland immediately here. Give my opponent the priority pass at end of turn to decide whether or not they are doing something with Noble Hierarch, and if they do, I can Wasteland or Ghost Quarter that land if it seems relevant. Is a Gaia's Cradle. I will take out the Gaia's Cradle. That's fine. So we're just looking to buy time now. My opponent will pay for both of their creatures. I get a chump block with this construct token, get through this turn taking 5. Drop of Honey will destroy a white, and then hopefully within 2 cards I draw something else that answers a creature. Okay, that's a green sun for Dryad Arbor. I need to Ghost Quarter that prior to the end of my turn here. Oh fuck, I should have done this pre-combat, like before these attack, because these have vigilance. Well, if my opponent's just sacking now, actually. Ooh, shit. The phasing. Yeah, that's good. So because of that, ooh, that's actually a disaster. So that puts an extra creature into the graveyard. This means that I take 12. My blocks are not good anymore. Yeah. So if pre-combat I Ghost Quarter Dryad Arbor, my opponent can sack it to phase this out. I take 6, then my Drop of Honey, I believe, will destroy my construct token and not one of the whites. Ooh, this is a rough interaction for me. Okay, in most matchups, we're probably not going to sideboard a ton. My Vexing Baubles aren't particularly strong here. This is something that I can just board out and replace with some generic stuff that is maybe not good enough to Living Wish for, and that I might want to naturally draw. So what is my highest priority Living Wish target? I don't want to board that in. I think I just want to draw Tabernacle naturally often. I think I'm okay naturally drawing that. I think I'm okay naturally drawing creatures that look like this, and Living Wish gets me a land tutor, a decent sized body, or a strong endgame win condition. It can also just hit a generic land drop. That's weakening the Living Wish package a little bit. I think it's fine. This is probably fine. I don't think it's ideal. We don't have turn 1 green. We don't have one of the broken turn 1 plays. We are not losing to damage-based win conditions, and I can cycle a Tranquil Thicket if I think that's a good idea. Opponent's deck is cool. Elvish Reclaimer. So given another one of these as a draw, let's just cycle the first one before I make any further decisions. Drop of Honey. Let's just play another green source this turn. That way I can Drop of Honey next turn, start destroying some creatures while doing something disruptive, be that Ghost Quarter or Maze of Ith. I can make that decision based on what's happening on the other side of the battlefield. But Cradle, obviously, strong magic card. Ramunap, Ghost Quarter. Yeah, I like that. Let's go ahead and start with Drop of Honey, pass the turn. Now, probably upkeep here. I think I just take out the Gaia's Cradle. My opponent can turn Gaia's Cradle into Gaia's Cradle, but it comes at the cost of not being able to use the Gaia's Cradle mana in this turn, which is a big deal because every turn I stop that mana from actively being used, Drop of Honey destroys a creature. So despite the fact that this is slightly awkward for me, I think this is a net positive. There's the Reclaimer activation. My opponent gets to do their thing. And this is a really weird ass tempo play that I think is fine. Now, if my opponent follows this up with some mana dorks or something like that, it does start to get awkward, but I'm not even taking damage immediately from these creatures. Ooh, is my opponent going to feed a Dryad Arbor to these things? Negative. Oh, are they going to sack the forest for Dryad Arbor then? That makes both of these 3/4s. Okay, nope, I am just getting all the reads wrong here. My opponent junks a creature. I destroy an Elvish Reclaimer. Okay. I see. So they're doing this because that's a great draw. Because Drop of Honey lets me choose when there is a tie, so they can't hold one back. I make the choice on a tie. All right, so Wasteland, target Gaia's Cradle, and then we will cast the Living Wish. Again, our options here are worse than normal. I think I am probably just into like a sowing Myco spawn as a land-based tutor for when we get a little bit further into the game. That's what's going to allow me to get like my Maze of Ith or whatever. Maze of Ith, bad example here as I have 2 of them in my hand, but that is going to let me get my missing piece, maybe a Tabernacle, maybe another Wasteland. Drop of honey going down. That's fine. I don't think I am in danger of dying to Elvish Reclaimer. I was more scared of something like a Natural Order coming down and representing a stronger combo finish and an extra 5 cards or something. Oh yeah, this is great for me. All right, opponent gets Talon Gates of Madara. I take 3 damage. This is fine. We're not too worried about the phasing for blockers as of right now. My opponent phases out their creature. I can't touch it on my turn. Oh shit, that's so good. So I will drop this Exploration, which means I can make a mana-producing land drop while also making a defensive land drop and then pass the turn. And then Ramunap, Excavator, plus Wasteland and Ghost Quarter with multiple land drops is just disgusting. My opponent attacks for 3. I'm pretty sure I just take 3 as to not untap this creature. That's so weird. Feels correct. If I lose by 3 life, though, it was me getting smart. Okay, there is the Natural Order that I predicted being a problem. This can allow my opponent to get an Atraxa and refuel, which is a really big deal right now. God damn it, it's Endurance. Oh, please don't take that. So fucking good right now. Fuck, they took Endurance. All right, so Endurance, Springheart, Nantuko as enchantment, Green Sun, Cradle. All right, so here's what they have, plus 1 unknown card. So this turn got weird. I think we're not worried about like Caracasing that. I think Maze of Ith deals with that. I think we are going to play Ramunap like this, tapping the Ghost Quarter in an attempt to force 2 cards out, or we get to do sick Wasteland things. Doing the Ghost Quarter things is much weaker here. Oh shit, it's just happening. Okay, was not expecting that. Well, land drop number 1, Wasteland a land. Land drop number 2, Wasteland a land. We have Atraxa on lockdown. I can keep doing this every turn. We have Gaia's Cradle plus Springheart Nantuko as a problem. We can do some Caracas shenanigans next turn to bounce an Atraxa out of play. All right, there is Springheart Nantuko. There's Cradle. Now my opponent can threaten to hardcast Endurance. We'll just Maze of Ith that. And I imagine my opponent now hardcasts Endurance before I can start doing these things from my hand. Okay, happening in upkeep instead. So in the short term, I lose Wasteland. In the long term, not so much. So my way to win this game involves a Tabernacle. Tabernacle clears most of this stuff. Ghost Quarter kind of awkward with Springheart Nantuko on the other side of the battlefield. I think it's fine. So I think we are going land drop 1, land drop 2. Can't quite cast this with Kicker. Regular cast this. Find a Tabernacle. This resolves. Ghost Quarter, Gaia's Cradle. So my opponent gets another friend, and we'll pass the turn. My opponent is losing some number of creatures here. Something's happening after an insect is sacked. Oh, it's just floating mana. Yeah, that's fine. All right, insect down. I imagine my opponent pays for at least some of this. Springheart Nantuko is a very powerful card. My opponent wants to find more copies of Gaia's Cradle to get them out of this pinch. Those are going to be short-term bodies. Endurance and Atraxa can attack. I don't really want to lose Ramunap Excavator. I think it is worth taking 3 damage to not give up that body right now, especially since I'm about to have a second Maze of Ith that just solves my defensive problem for right now. I could throw away Sowing Mycospawn. It probably saves me life if I keep it in play though. Like I don't need these Tranquil Thickets for mana. Yeah. Exploration. Ghost Quarter. Ghost Quarter a land. Ghost Quarter. Ghost Quarter a land? If I knew my opponent didn't have another forest, I wouldn't have bothered playing the other Maze of Ith. Okay, cool. Pass turn, attacks are unnecessary. Next turn, I play a Ghost Quarter 3 different times, and I think we're just good to go. My opponent's got another Surveil land. Like, this is the moment. The Dryad Arbor. Sure. There's like not a great way to get all these Tabernacle triggers onto the stack and onto the screen. We're losing some number of creatures on the other side of the battlefield here. My opponent just physically does not have enough mana to pay for everything. All right, the Nantucket is going. The Atraxa is staying. So my opponent has 2 creatures for if they Gaia's Cradle. This is the squeeze. Put our opponent in the Vice Grips. That was a pretty intricate game. I think we both had some slightly different lines we could have taken there. All right, is the Living Wish package enough as it currently stands? Wait, hold up. Are there only 3 Maze of Iths here? Is there not a 4th Maze of Ith chilling in the sideboard? There's not a 4th Maze of Ith chilling in the sideboard. That's probably my fault. Oops. I can still get a mana. I can still get a tutor. I can still get 2 different win conditions. I've increased my chances of naturally drawing the things that matter to get early, like the Tabernacles. I think this is fine. This is a no green mana hand that otherwise looks quite good. I think I'll mulligan it. Yeah, this is great. With this specific hand, the exploration currently isn't that good, but it's so easy for that card to become good. I think that I am not ready for Living Wish yet. I'm going to put that back into the deck. And if possible, I want to play this game out in a way where I only expose 1 enchantment at a time to a removal spell. To a Force of Vigor specifically. Oh, Winding Way is great. I think even though sometimes it doesn't kill more than 1 creature, I think it's just okay to play a turn 1 Drop of Honey. And if we get a Time Walk out of that, like, we're good with that. Time Walk, good Magic card. Like, my opponent can just play a land, attack me for 1, not play future creature. Oh, wow, they're just going. That probably means Gaia's Cradle is a follow-up here? No, this is the only way out is through situation. Unless they still have Cradle beyond that. Oh, Jukabog, sure. All right, so now things get more interesting because of Force of Vigor. So I can play a 2nd drop of Honey. We'll get rid of Ignoble Hierarch here. I could play a 2nd drop of Honey and work on destroying more creatures at the same time. However, if Force of Vigor happens, that's incredibly awkward for me. I currently know that my opponent has 1 forest, right? Because they could not search up last game. So Ghost Quarter is Strip Mine. Trying to keep my opponent off of Natural Order could be important. I can also just snag Dryad Arbor. Yeah, so let's Ghost Quarter, destroy Dryad Arbor. Oh, there is a 2nd forest. I guess it was in hand last time? That's awkward. So now I decide if I want to Exploration. My opponent has 3 cards. If Force of Vigor trades for this and this, that might be okay for me. I think I'm gonna make this, just take the extra land drop here, because it's difficult for me to play my next turn cycle without the Exploration. With Exploration, I can Winding Way into Tabernacle or equivalent, Tabernacle or Maze of Ith or whatever. This is fine. That's fine. This is going to be a large creature. This is why we want like the Maze of Ith style cards, is to brick those combat steps. And I'll take 2 here. All right, so we will destroy an Ignoble Hierarch. Oh shit, Life from the Loam. I think casting Winding Way this turn is just better though, unfortunately. I would like to find another green source or a Maze of Ith or whatever. We choose land. Oh, it is a Tabernacle. So Tabernacle is unquestionably one of my choices here. I think I play the 2nd drop of Honey. I think that's better than Cycle Tranquil Thicket. Our opponent should be feeling the squeeze here. My opponent might not even save the Noble Hierarch here. This has been a great game of Magic. All right, my opponent does save Noble Hierarch. Both of those creatures are currently slated for death. We'll see what actually happens. Lair of the Hydra. That's a fun one. We can take that out with like a Demolition Field or a Ghost Quarter or whatever, and it'll be okay. My opponent could sack Noble Hierarch here for an extra point of damage. Negative. Drop of Honey. So I think we are going to see Madara Uchiha in action. There is our phasing. So my opponent is going to phase out their creature. So this is going to destroy my copies of Drop of Honey. Ramunap Excavator. Or does this enter tapped? Put it onto the battlefield. Sure. Ramunap Ghost Quarter. Ramunap Ghost Quarter. Destroys 2 of these lands. I think I like getting Life from the Loam going. So let's take out Lair of the Hydra here. Yes. I get a basic, you're out of basics. So there's land drop 1. Sorry, that's not land drop 1. This is land drop 1. Then I Life from the Loam, 2 lands. Ghost Quarter and Demolition Field. I play Ghost Quarter. That's my second land. We will Ghost Quarter away a forest, and then hopefully I can do some dredge Life from the Loam nonsense to finish stabilizing off of this. If I miss with a Life from the Loam dredge, I can Ramunap Excavator and block White of the Reliquary for a turn. Ooh, this is gonna be a lot of damage. I can take 7 damage, 8 if my opponent sacrifices the Ignoble Hierarch. This is gonna be a little tight, but I can also potentially just obliterate all of my opponent's lands. All right, there is a Maze of Ith. So 2 land drops. The safest way probably to put a maze into play. If I try to, I could Demolition Field and attempt to like Wasteland lands out. I think this is just gonna be better. Maze, Wasteland, Ghost Quarter, 1, 2. So I don't think there's another Bojuka Bog. I don't think my opponent was supposed to activate this now. I think they're supposed to wait. Wait, end of turn, potentially get Wasteland. The Wasteland, a Maze of Ith. It is a Dryad Arbor, sure. So land drop 1, land drop 2, Demolition Field, Dryad Arbor before our opponent untaps. I say yes. I get a forest that allows me to cycle Tranquil Thicket to get back Life from the Loam at instant speed if we need to do that. And then hopefully all of my opponent's lands are gone in the next turn or so. Maze of Ith this. I will go ahead and cycle end of turn here. I could wait. I'll dredge this. Living Wish Lumra is pretty cool for the not too distant future. I'm going to start clicking on cards. I'm a little low on time. So Ramunap Wasteland, Ramunap Ghost Quarter is a thing that is happening here. So start with Ghost Quarter. Ghost Quarter, the basic forest. Replay Ghost Quarter while I have priority. Change phases. Let that mana empty. Wasteland, Bojuka Bog, Ghost Quarter, Talon Gates of Madara. Now I have a blocker in play for if something goes wrong and I lose Maze of Ith. This is the last turn that my opponent can pay for this creature. And then I can Living Wish, put a billion lands into play, win somehow. The turn after I Living Wish, I will just win the game. That's not hard. Maze of Ith, prevent all that damage. Snuff out. That is a perfectly fine play. I have a Demolition Field for the Mortuary, so this is not going to accomplish what my opponent wants it to accomplish, although they did set up a pretty good spot here. It is unfortunately just not good enough. Ooh, is it with that Evoke though for an extra land drop? It does put another thing into play. All right, my opponent is playing well. They are still in the game. 1, 2, 3, 4. I could have 5, 6. Is there a way that I don't lose to Wasteland? Oh, Demolition Field. So Demolition Field, destroy Bayou. Yes. Get Forest. Oh, that was land drop 1. Ooh, that does not actually get me there. Let's see what Living Wish is getting me. Living Wish is just literally going to get me a blocker, or in case things go wrong. And yeah, because all I need to do is just survive to Life from the Loam Demolition Field, and we just win. Yep. So we'll just maze that, pay, and we can kill our opponent with 7 Collector Oof attacks before we time out. That's not hard. Assuming no MTGO lag problems, that is. We can also just like find a Lair of the Hydra or whatever, and this is perfectly easy to do. Land drop, pass turn. Now I'm just gonna remove this stop. We can just kind of F6 through our opponent's turns and hit them for 7 each time. You may phase my creature out. Not a problem. Don't need to dredge. We'll just blow that up. We're just trying not to time out. No need to bother dredging here. I'm actually not even gonna put that into play. I am just kind of accepting this game as over. The Magic Online isn't great after this long of a game, but it is what it is. This time I'll dredge. So Ghost Quarter, your land. You can fetch, do your thing. I will then Wasteland the land you get so that you can't accumulate any mana. Demolition Field this. Yes. Land drop, Life from the Loam. 1, 2, 3, 1, and 2. Lag is insane though. It's fine, we're not in any danger of timing out. Wasteland you, play an exploration just in case. Ghost Quarter, Punchies, 2, 5. Don't need to bother dredging. I'm not even gonna bother to cast it. I think we're just good. I am more likely to die to MTGO lag than anything else here. Punchies. All right, our opponent has finally given us the GGs in chat. Oh, they are going to make us do the lethal attack though. All right, we got some decent MTGO lag at the end there, but that was a hell of a match. Well played on both sides. Today's video is sponsored by Moxfield.com, and honestly, they're just the best at what they do. If you need to keep your deck lists online, this is the way to do it. They have all sorts of different viewing options. You can condense that text if you like things to be tight. You can make them visual grids. You can put them in stacks. You've got all sorts of different ways to kind of view and visualize your deck lists. And they also have some really cool functionality, like allowing you to see playtest hands and even fully playtest your decks. So check them out. All right, I have rebooted Magic Online just in case. We'll start off with a burgeoning. I have a bunch of extra lands here, winding way to find even more. This hopefully ends up being a solid hand, although if we, winding way into 4 copies of Living Wish and just totally brick on cantripping with our card, it could end up not being great. Let's reset this upkeep stop. I will probably need that. Burgeoning. Given this land drop, Ghost Quarter is probably not hyper effective right now. I think I'm just going to put another green source into play and call that a turn. Yo dog, I heard you liked burgeoning. I think we are going to play Winding Way around Daze and then play another Dazeable Burgeoning. Choose land. That's not great. Yeah, those were good cards. We'll play another burgeoning to just get further ahead on land drops, and if we just need to hit our opponent in the face with a Hydra because we don't have anything else to do, that is, I guess, fine. Our opponent is cantripping, and then presumably going to play a fetch land, at which point I will get 2 additional land drops. Forest for 1. Probably Ghost Quarter for the other. Like, don't show my opponent Wasteland before I need to. This is all fine. So I can Wasteland Underground Sea, hit my opponent for a bunch, potentially. My opponent is probably a Grixis Delver deck list. If we're seeing this Bobble, that Bobble is most commonly going to see play alongside DRC. Oh, fuck, that Life from the Loam just goes to my graveyard. Delicious. Tabernacle. Okay. Wasteland. Target Underground Sea. Order matters a little bit here. I think I'm gonna kind of go for broke. My opponent probably has 1 basic island, is my guess. Well, 1 basic island is indeed correct. How many basics you have, more generally? Life from the Loam. Target Tabernacle, Wasteland, Ghost Quarter. Yeah and yeah. No force of negation. Dear opponent, would you like to play a land? How would you feel hypothetically about playing a land? Oh yeah, baby. Like Wasteland here, and I like Ghost Quarter here. Let's do it in the beginning of combat step though. Beginning of combat step, we will Wasteland Underground Sea. My opponent could brainstorm. No, they did not brainstorm. Oh god, that felt so fucking good. Let's do that again. This is probably an instance of Dex Perfect, don't sideboard. I want to be able to tutor for Graveyard Hate. I want to be able to tutor for Tabernacle. I want that last Mazavith in the deck list. I was so mentally certain that there were 4 of them. Okay, what portion of the time do I actually tutor for a Tabernacle, given all this other shit I have to tutor for? Still sometimes. This hand is a little mana light, but it has really good cards in it. I am going to keep this one, recognizing that sometimes it does not go well because I don't hit additional land drops, but I think that is an outlier rather than a norm. I like this a lot. This shuts off baubles and counter spells, or potentially takes a Daze or Force of Will out of my hand, so my more critical cards resolve just a little bit later. Naturally hitting a land drop next turn is kind of a big deal. Not the end of the world if I miss, but I'm like a 37-ish land deck. It should usually happen. I am not super great at answering this Planeswalker, admittedly. The thing is, though, this ultimate kind of could do nothing sometimes, in that if I start destroying my opponent's land, this is not a big deal. I'm gonna play this land tapped, and Exploration probably sets me up best for the next turn. Again, awkward short term. We've missed on a few land drops. Well, okay, we've missed on lands for a few draws. Again, not the end of the world. Hopefully Winding Way on my next turn just solves this problem. Fuck me. All right. I mean, I have an answer for that literally in hand. This makes my turn very mana inefficient, though. Is not where I want to be at this stage of the game. Now I just have blue mana, so I'm passing the turn. Petty Theft is very strong. So this Tamiyo is probably going to ultimate. That's hopefully not the end of the world. It's fine if I destroy the Harbinger of the Seas in a timely fashion before my opponent gets other threats in play. If My opponent starts getting other threats in play and they like play something small that keeps this alive for a few turns, I might start running into some problems. That's just my opponent not paying attention. That's fine, happens to the best of us. Life from the Loam is really good in just a minute. It's not really good right now. We are facing down a Cameo Ultimate plus Emblem. We'll see if that matters. A Psychic Frog this turn would be real bad. Ooh, that's not great. That means counterspells are back on. That's also my way to get rid of the Harbinger. And I don't have too many ways to do that. All right. So I will cycle my Vexing Bauble then. That's not bad. But with 25 spells in hand, or 25 cards in hand, it's pretty likely that my opponent can just kind of counter my stuff or otherwise remove it and then just eventually Psychic Frog kill me in one shot. That is a new Tameo. This is fine. Let's go land drop past a Living Wish. Yes. Run. Fuck you, 5/5 uncounterable. That sounds pretty good. Then we'll play a Burgeoning so that I can get additional land drops. Opponent says no to that one. They did not say no to my Living Wish, which let me get an uncounterable thing, which is nice. More generally, though, I have not figured out how to beat the Psychic Frog. That is ultimately coming. Not here yet. So land drop, uncounterable Thrun gets us started. This is indestructible on my turn. Can't be the target of non-green spells or abilities my opponents control. This is just not leaving play. My opponent can play a flyer end of turn and start hitting me for 3 per turn cycle. Oh, an Edict. That's not the best. That's that asshole. And a Murktide Regent. At this point, I am certainly dead next turn. My opponent has 19 cards in hand, so Psychic Frog alone is lethal. Not to mention just the Murktide Regent and the Harbinger. Yeah, missing out on land draws in those first 2 or 3 draws resulted me in losing that game. Although it would have been very tough even if I did hit those, given the cards that my opponent had access to. I think we are just going to resubmit as is without making any changes. This is fine. Just Vexing Bauble into Winding Way. I have a Wasteland if my opponent starts out on Underground Sea or something like that. Didn't conceptually really think about Tameo being such a problem. I want to just board in an additional Caracas. I'm already running one, and I think I want to be able to Living Wish for one. But it's a little bit of a pain in the butt. There's too many Tranquil Thickets. Wasteland, Winding Way, use land. Hey, it is a Tabernacle. That's perfectly fine. Now, if the Tameo immediately transforms, it's a bit of a problem. If it doesn't immediately transform, I can probably choke it a little bit. Ooh, an opposing Wasteland into Unlicensed Hearse. That's fine. So I think let's play Burgeoning. We're fine with Wastelanding the Wasteland? I think so. We Wasteland, and then drop Tabernacle to make Tameo noticeably worse. Then if my opponent starts making land drops, I start messing with them via Field of Ruin. And I think they need to make land drops. I think I'd just play a Tranquil Thicket here, get ETB tapped lands out of the way. The clues here are kind of whatever. Hearse is not currently a problem. Ponder is only the second card. That's not that big of a deal. Play Field of Ruin, take out the Underground Sea, grab a Forest. Opponent can get a Swamp there. I don't need to cycle this immediately, although I could for Bowmaster purposes. No, there's like Hearse. I'll wait, because my opponent will just eat those 2 cards. Then I'll just like cycle this, and it's fine. Player on Bowmaster in that capacity. Ghost Quarter is great. Ghost Quarter actively gets to destroy these things. Tameo unfortunately flips. So now this is going to become how many of my opponent's lands can I actually obliterate. Let's not yield through this turn anymore. I needed 1 more turn to take out that basic island. Try to stop that from happening is this. EE for 1. Sure. If my opponent cracks that, it destroys Tameo. So I think I am good with that. Cycle immediately? Seems like cycle immediately. Tabernacle, not the best. I think I am playing Ghost Quarter this turn. Ghost Quartering Island. And then when my opponent plays a land, I'll sneakily put in Lair of the Hydra. And then just like attempt to bash in and kill Tameo. This is relying on my opponent having a land. I think that's okay to do. Yeah. I don't have a Life from the Loam anyway. All right, there is the land. So this is where I put in Lair of the Hydra. What is the follow-up? Hopefully not Psychic Frog. Yeah, my opponent is cracking EE. So I will respond, Vexing Bauble, draw a card. Their Tamiyo dies, which I don't know if they realized was going to happen. Now, yeah, Field of Ruin. Target Underground Sea. Yeah, take that out. Get a Forest. I could deal 2 damage to my opponent, or I can just turn Life from the Loam into Field of Ruin, which I think I like better. That was worth a Force of Will. Sure. This leaves me with Drop of Honey for later. I can just Urza Saga my way to victory here. Tabernacle's annoying. 1 Ghost Quarter is devastating here. Nothing else fails. I just hit my opponent for a large amount with Lair of the Hydra. Yeah, so let's go land drop, make the future counterspells worse, then activate our Lair of the Hydra for X equals 3 and bash in. We could get like Fatal Pushed or something. I don't really care if I lose the land at this point though, to be honest. Yeah, I think my opponent punted this game when they destroyed their own Tamiyo. They can like very potentially just recover this game still. Psychic Frog is a hell of a drug. Psychic Frog is something that could outsize my Urza Saga construct tokens. Nethergoyf. I can drop a Honey that away. Ooh, the crewing hurts like a bitch, though. That's not the best. Boseiju. I can take out this land. I don't know if that is better than just taking out Unlicensed Hearse, though. Unlicensed Hearse plus, I don't know, once the escape cost is 3, I'm always playing Drop of Honey. So 3 total mana for Urza Saga plus activate, 2 total mana for Boseiju on this, plus 1 mana for Drop of Honey. And I can still make Forest as a land drop. Do that, and I think pass turn there. So tax on Nethergoyf. My opponent is just crewing. That's fine. So you're just going to sacrifice the Goyf? Ooh, they are. Sure. And this doesn't trample or anything. So part of me just wants to Urza Saga Construct token block this, Boseiju this land, so my opponent can't play Psychic Frog. But I should probably just answer this. There is like this, which is why my opponent is sacrificing their Goyf. I will, I don't know, if I just block, then my opponent can't play a new creature in this turn cycle without it being destroyed by Drop of Honey. This is fine. Wasteland on, I think, my Lair of the Hydra, honestly. Opponent disagrees. So end of turn, I am about to lose this Drop of Honey. I think we just take out Hearse now, so that my opponent doesn't just like play a creature, crew that, and hit me for very close to lethal. Now this is not a true Ghost Quarter effect, so my opponent can get more mana. This means that my Lair of the Hydra could actually die to a removal spell. I'm still just going to ram it into something like a Sudden Edict. This is all I have to do with my mana right now, so let's try to 3-turn clock our opponent. And if it works, cool. If it doesn't, seems like my opponent has a response. Okay, yeah, there is a Shoulder's Edict. That's fine. So now we need to find a source of card advantage or a Living Wish or something. We're no longer really choking our opponent on mana. Like, cards is the limiting factor, so we need to answer a Psychic Frog very, very quickly if our opponent finds one. This is a Cycle the Bauble moment. Try to find something proactive to do immediately. Basic Forest, not what I am looking for here. So Psychic Frog plus Clues probably gets out of control relatively quickly. I've got outs to this. It's just not a great situation. My opponent put a card on top as well. That's not great. So my opponent starts drawing. My opponent can crack a clue end of turn, and the Tabernacle game is not going well as of right now. Opponent is going to be back up to 6 cards in hand to my effective 0 cards in hand. Counterspells are live again because I was cycling Vexing Bauble, knowing that the Psychic Frog is just an imminent threat. That helps a lot. My opponent has had a couple of draws towards something like a Wasteland, so this is not 100% guaranteed to hold the Psychic Frog off forever, but hopefully this buys me some time. Don't want to beat the dead horse, but like I really wish I had the 4th copy of this. If I'm the opponent, I am looking for Wasteland or Harbinger of the Seas. That's about it, and I might accept some things like another Psychic Frog or something like that as just being good enough. Opponent is discarding cards. They discarded a Surgical Extraction rather than extracting something like Drop of Honey, and they discarded a card rather than discarding 2 Psychic Frog to grow their creature? Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. Take out a land. What are you doing? Yeah, let's draw a Vexing Bauble followed by a Living Wish and end this game. That sounds great to me. Yeah, I mean, I can take 2 points of damage a couple of times before this actually becomes a problem. Opponent is hard discarding cards to hand size rather than playing things. Oh hey, an answer to Harbinger. I probably have to play it now. Like, this probably just eats Force of Will, but I think I just need to play spells when I have them. Like, my opponent is discarding rather than playing cards, so I'm not expecting things to resolve immediately. I'll take 2 more. Seems like my opponent has a Murktide Regent here, which is not great for me. That's real hard to beat. Yeah, so another drop of honey for this is great, but we don't beat the onboard Murktide Regent, unfortunately. We come up just short in this one. And my opponent made some very bad errors, EEing away their own Planeswalker, missing like damage or potential value with Psychic Frog, but we couldn't punish it. Okay, this is a weird one. I think it is still a keep. Double Field of Ruin is mana fixing for my green, which means that long term I have Life from the Loam Wasteland lock already available with a tutor win condition for as things go later. Well, fuck me. We don't get turn 1, I don't get to play Vexing Bauble. Okay, so this is a matchup that I'm probably just not going to win, just based on what my deck is and what it does. Vexing Bauble helps a little bit, but my opponent's deck might even have Vexing Bauble just in it already. So we are fully expecting to lose this matchup, and I don't think it is. Yeah, there's the opposing Vexing Bauble. So I am fully expecting to lose this matchup. I have some tricks available to me, but those tricks aren't great. My opponent also like has not shown me a non-basic land so that I can activate Field of Ruin and start kind of doing my thing. And we'll see if my opponent can storm off or generate a decent amount of value this turn. It's relatively rare a legacy deck has no non-basic lands. There's still going to be things like Ancient Tomb within this deck list that I will be able to hit, but I cannot rely on my opponent or green fixing with Field of the Dead in this specific matchup. Reforge the Soul. It's been a hot minute since I've seen that one in action. You've got it. All right, am I interested in cracking Vexing Bauble to try to hit green? Let's say no. Hit green, that's fine, we'll play that. Some portion of the time, I just immediately lose my hand to my opponent reforging the soul. It does a discard then draw 7, so I guess I could immediately dredge Life from the Loam if I so desired. That's fine. Oh, my opponent is a full-on bonus round version of the deck list. I would love to hit a green source immediately. What is my best Living Wish option versus a deck like this? I had Lodestone Golem in a draft of this deck. Picked Sowing Mycospawn is a thing. Brennan 6, I guess, stops Vexing Bauble cycles. There may be a small amount of artifact mana that Vexing Bauble is stopping, but that is a may. I'm a turn away for Living Wish for Rex Sage. I don't super want to 2-turn those things because then the Rex Sage gets discarded. I don't think I cycle Vexing Bauble this turn. Maybe next turn we're interested in that. I could do something like Living Wish for Collector Oof and put a threat into play immediately, but I don't think I am in love with that. I think we are going to just play this, pass the turn, kind of not really using my mana efficiently at all. It is a weird game of Magic where I have effectively made no real plays, but I'm still alive on turn 5. Let's see what this gets. It could just be a Rite of Flame to get some mana going here. 6 mana after a second Rite of Flame. So Reforge the Soul is live, bonus round is live. This turn probably gets pretty boring from here for me if my opponent bonus rounds into Reckless Impulse. Notably, this is a player, but that's not really relevant for me. I'm just going to F6 here. Whatever happens, happens. If I miss out on an opportunity to crack a Vexing Bauble, so be it. All right, there is Lotus Petal in the deck list, so Vexing Bauble is doing some very, very minor work, but mana is very much no longer the bottleneck. It is a new Ruby Medallion. So the expensive stuff like Reforge the Soul and Past in Flames are now very live. Jeska's Will gives my opponent a gajillion D mana. Mana was not a bottleneck before, and now probably is not a bottleneck for the remainder of the turn. That's just building storm count. All right, this is a double Reforge the Soul. No, I won't dredge Life from the Loam. Oh my god, every single time I have to do this. Yeah, I just don't want to do that. So let's no longer yield through the turn. I can now both Sage you a Ruby Medallion with some of this mana here. So yeah, and yeah. This unfortunately gives my opponent another land, but the Ruby Medallion is worth much more than 1 mana. All right, so Reforge the Soul. No, 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 no. I want Life from the Loam as the final card in this hand so that I can Life from the Loam, Boseiju a Ruby Medallion if somehow it makes it back to my turn. Doing that means that I can't naturally draw the Boseiju, the remaining Boseiju with my next draw. That's you know, relatively unlikely. Happens 1 in 34 times. I think I like edging to always be able to Boseiju if I get another turn. I will now F6 again until my opponent does a redraw. And if at that point I happen to draw a Boseiju, cool. We see our opponent making some blue mana here. That could be a hedge towards Echo of Eons being a thing that happens, but these bonus round copies of the things that my opponent are doing are pretty likely to result in a win. All right, yeah, so there's a Hornfell. So if you're not familiar with this one, my opponent can now discard a card to exile the top 2 cards of their library to play those cards this turn. I am just going to now give you an update at the end of turn. I imagine that my opponent wins from here. Blue can be a Thassa's Oracle, for example, if they built their deck in a capacity that allows them to do that as a thing. My opponent has put copies of Burning Wish onto the stack, which I imagine get something that kills me. Elemental Eruption. That does not kill me. That loses. What the fuck is this? Take an extra turn after this one. During that turn, damage can't be prevented. At the beginning of that end step, you lose the game. Sure. So then at that point, a Tabernacle does not beat Elemental Eruption. Sort of interestingly, if I don't try to save the Living Wish for another turn cycle and I Living Wish for Collector Oof, sometimes I shut off a relevant Harnfell line there. I imagine that given all of my opponent's vast resources, they did not necessarily need the Harnfell to win the game. You know, it is noteworthy, and I will let my opponent turn their dragon sideways. GG. We don't want to face decks that look like this. It's very bad for us. So very obviously, Thorn of Amethyst is nuts. We want to do that. Drop of Honey, not great. Maze of Ith, not great. Tabernacle, not great. Probably staying in the deck. Drop of Honey is so incredibly slow versus Birgi. It is a thing versus Urza's Saga. I'm hoping to answer Urza's Saga in other capacities. So I think Drop of Honey switches with Thorn. And Collector Oof is staying in the sideboard. I might just board in a Karakas over something like a Demolition Field. That way occasionally I just bounce a Birgi out of play. Keep this wishable. This is fine. Do I want this many Maze of Ith still? Probably. They're not great, but sometimes I am just going to need something to help deal with Urza's Saga. Exploration off Basic Forest, into Burgeoning, into Ghost Quarter, Life from the Loam, Burgeoning, Exploration. This is such a cool fucking hand. Like, this hand is wild. This hand does not have a Thorn of Amethyst, which is the most important card in the matchup, I think. I think I'm losing this matchup anyway. I'm going to keep this hand for entertainment purposes. In any sort of real tournament, I think I would mulligan this one. I don't think it's good enough, but it's so fucking cool. Land drop. Exploration. Burgeoning. Fast turn. Super interestingly here, if my opponent just leads on a land like Urza's Saga, my Burgeoning trigger is going to resolve before their Urza's Saga counter trigger does, so I can Ghost Quarter in Urza's Saga before it actually produces mana. Although that could convert it into red mana, which might not actually be a good thing. Burgeoning. Ghost Quarter into play. I imagine this is... oh, no. It is a Wren's Resolve. Those are nice Ghost Quarterable lands. Oh, yeah. This is slightly awkward in the short term. I think it's fine in the longer term. The innate problem here is that if I Ghost Quarter, I go down to having 2 mana, since Tabernacle does not tap for mana, and then I can't actually cast my Life from the Loam. I'm not putting a land onto the battlefield. I imagine there's some number of Abrade style cards in my opponent's deck that can mess around with things that I am playing here. That Birgi does have a tax associated with it. Urza's Saga is no longer playable. This is awkward. I would like my opponent to not have Ancient Tomb. I think what we're doing here is Ghost Quarter, target my own forest? Yes. Get a forest. That puts me up to 3 mana. Life from the Loam, back, Ghost Quarter, and forest. Paying for that tax. Ghost Quarter, target Ancient Tomb. Turn Ancient Tomb into something that produces 1 mana. And then I still have a land drop. Pass turn. So now I can get hit buy Burgi for a couple of turns for 3 points of damage, but that should not be something that takes me fully from 20. And I might not be able to just Ghost Quarter out all of my opponent's mountains from their deck. I don't know exactly how many they are playing, but even if I don't get rid of everything that they are doing, this Life from the Loam engine will allow me to answer a Burgi, almost certainly. Ghost Quarter, Maze, Caracas. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, land drop 1 is Caracas. Land drop 2 is just going to be Ghost Quarter. So we will Ghost Quarter away a mountain here and pass turn. We'll let our opponent pay for Burgi with Tabernacle and then bounce it with Caracas. Could take 3 damage, so my opponent can't play this as Harnfell in a turn or two. But I am just hoping to run my opponent out of mountains, if I am being honest. And Harnfell currently costs 6 mana. That's not the easiest to do. So there's a bonus Mazavith just for fun. Lotus Petal. Dredge is fine. Still just a single Ghost Quarter there, unfortunately. Is worth 3 mana to go ahead and do. We'll play it. We will keep Ghost Quartering these mountains. At some point, our opponent will run out. Not yet, though. 4 mana Seething Song. That can get our opponent to 6 mana for Harnfell. Yep. That's in play. With Thorn in play, I'm not the most scared of that. Oh my god. Just absolutely not hitting any other lands here to take advantage of Exploration and Burgeoning. Oh, that's rough. I mean, I will keep Ghost Quartering here. We have so few non-land cards in our deck. This is really quite wild. The worry here is that my opponent finds a Ruby Medallion quickly this turn. I am not worried about the Harnfell in the longer term. I'm worried about it in the short term. The Burning Wish could get something that gets rid of Thorn. Can't cast it immediately, though. They're just going instead. All right, there's a Ruby Medallion that my opponent can't currently cast. They could cast it next turn. All right, Life from the Loam. How about another Ghost Quarter? Hey, how do we feel about that? Ghost Quarter, and then a forest and a legendary land that does not matter. Yeah. So Ghost Quarter, start taking out basic lands. Still going. So then land drop, and at this point, the Life from the Loam is not castable since some of these things don't make mana. The Ruby Medallion is playable this turn. The Ruby Medallion costs 3 of that mana, and then at that point, the spells are kind of normal. Thorn's cost is negated by Ruby Medallion. Blast Zone's real good. Opponent's going deeper. There's not a lot of mana here. Conceptually, I am looking for Boseiju. A second Ghost Quarter could do some work. I mean, hell, I'd take something like a Lair of the Hydra at this point. All right, there's Blast Zone. Not going to do anything with Burgeoning here. That mana or an activation. That is a Burning Wish, potentially for a Rite of Flame. Yep, Rite of Flame. 4 total mana. Opponent is out of cards in hand for this. With Blast Zone tapped, I can just Ghost Quarter that. They're just going to call it a turn. Oh, I guess they can Ren's Resolve with the second Ruby Medallion in play. So now they're down to 2 cards that they can play. Are we fine with dredging Life from the Loam? I'm already going to try to get back Ghost Quarter. I think that's fine. Just trying to hit another Ghost Quarter or Wasteland is relevant. Yeah, there we go. Ghost Quarter, Forest. Not casting 2 Life from the Loams. So yeah. Land drop 1, Ghost Quarter, Blast Zone. Is it still getting replaced? Fuck, it's still getting replaced. Land drop 2, Ghost Quarter, Mountain. Okay, now they are starting to go. So we'll see what my opponent can do. It's like math. These cancel out. It's like my opponent has 1 Ruby Medallion in play. So their Ren's Resolve does cost 1 mana. They can try to string things together with that. Burgeoning happens, giving me an extra land drop. There is a Burgi. I probably bounce Burgi as soon as I have priority. A little weird because my opponent can replay it. I think that waste of mana is acceptable. So mana, not a bottleneck here. If bonus round into Seething Song happens. Harnfell happens, discarding the Burgi. Sure. My opponent Rite of Flames. Now they bonus round. Seething Song generates a lot of mana. Metamorphose draws 2 cards. And now we just kind of see how crazy those 2 cards go with Harnfell. Reckless Impulse is great. Opponent's got a couple of redraws here. I don't feel great about my chances. Opponent has gone through a surprising amount of their deck here. I'm just kind of now realizing that since we have played this awkward draw go game for a little while. Like, it's turn 8 and I've taken a bunch of cards out of their deck. 7 cards remaining, a storm count of 9, for sure. I believe my opponent now cannot cast another card that draws a card, or they end up decking themselves to their own bonus round. So that Manamorphose in exile, for example, just can't be cast. It seems like Burning Wish will just do it here, though. Fiery Confluence. Yeah, a copied Fiery Confluence is real good and a great shot. No, that's fine. That'll do it. So I can potentially take a few more points of damage from the Burgie to not bounce it and turn it into Harnfell. I don't think turning it into Harnfell matters in the average game. Like, I just think I dredged over an exceptional number of non-land cards to kind of do nothing for a few turns, but it may still have been a mistake to not take the points of damage. If I take the points of damage, then a small Elemental Eruption or Grape Shot or copied Fiery Confluence or something has a much greater chance of killing me later on in the game. Surprisingly interesting game for a super lopsided matchup. I'm glad I kept the hand just to see how it played out. Okay, I am on the draw here. I don't really think my hand has a dedicated game plan, and I think I just kind of lose to something like a turn 1 DRC or something of that general nature. This hand could come together with a decent number of hits. I think 10 hits make this hand very good. I think the times where I don't get those, this one's pretty rough. I'm going to try keeping this. It's a 10 in 53 with probably about 3 chances before anything is relevant. Hey, hit on the first one. Fantastic. We're not the happiest seeing Prismatic Vista on the other side of the table. That means my opponent is likely to play a very large number of basic lands. That is a basic forest that is not a snow-covered forest. Holy shit, my opponent put a win condition into play for me. It's fucking rad. Let's go. So, I like Burgeoning a lot. I have 4 lands in hand, soon to be 3 lands in hand. Living Wish for something that beats Bob in combat is pretty reasonable. I think I'm always into Burgeoning in this turn cycle. I don't know that I'm actually going to take my opponent off a land here. They are choosing to play Prismatic Vista. That probably means more than one of each one of these basics. So I think I am just going to put another card into play so I can cycle that a little bit later. Abrupt Decay on Burgeoning. So that is almost certainly an incorrect play there. So my opponent can wait until after their draw step and after that Dark Confidant trigger to make the decisions about how they are going to play their turn cycle, and instead they just chose not to do that. That feels like pretty sloppy play to me. So what is the plan here? On 4 mana, 6 into immediate Burgeoning is pretty interesting. I don't think that's going to be worth it. I kind of just don't hate basic forest and then just grab maybe a Sowing Myco spawn here. Just intend on playing that next turn. Let's say yes. And I'm choosing Sowing Myco spawn specifically because it seems to me like my opponent is just trying to play some anti-meta, just pile of Abrupt Decays, kill target Psychic Frog deck. That's what we're doing. Sure. And so I am not necessarily expecting my removal to go all the way here. Or sorry, my card that I play to go all the way. Let's cycle one of these for a redraw. There's a Ghost Quarter. Life from Loam. Land drop past a tutor. Tabernacle is interesting. It gives my opponent a way to sacrifice their Dark Confidants, but it does successfully stop these creature attacks from being profitable. None of the things that I do are going to stop my opponent from just drawing a Chain of Smog with a Dark Confidant trigger and then killing me. So probably in all games, we are going to live in fear of just dying to Witherbloom Apprentice. Yeah, there's Chain of Smog, so I am just going to die to that this turn. In case you're not familiar with this combo, how it works is whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. My opponent will target themselves with Chain of Smog repeatedly to drain me out. I am going to let them discard the cards in their hand so I can see a little bit more of their deck here. Please note that the copies are not cast. Sanguinator Cavalry also in here. And yeah, so here we are going to see the Chain of Smog loop. Again, I'm going to wait and see the last couple cards in my opponent's hand. Okay, yeah. So my general idea that this was going to be a pile of cards that kill Psychic Frog was correct. So my opponent has probably like 4 Abrupt Decay, 4 Assassin's Trophy, maybe some Fatal Pushes or something as well. We're going to be totally fine versus the creature side of this and very bad versus the combo side of this. And that's probably not going to change. I am probably not sideboarding for this matchup. Thorn of Amethyst is not going to be great versus my opponent's Dark Rituals because the Dark Rituals are going to go under Thorn. My Vexing Baubles aren't fantastic. That's probably the best that I can say of them. We'll probably board those out and just board in some generic cards, like just put a couple of bodies into the deck that can block, keep sowing Mycospawn as a tutor, and then go up a land or 2 from there. This is not the sort of deck that I want to play against. This hand is fine. Leyline of the Void. So Forest, Exploration. If Life from the Loam isn't going to do things anymore and Ramunap Excavator isn't going to do things, then we will just immediately go into Urza Saga mode and attempt to mid-range this game out. If my opponent can like Dark Ritual from here, they can potentially just keep up with what I am doing and be a-okay. For my Singleton Urza Saga, I do not have a Vexing Bauble to fetch anymore. This is 2 2/2s, sort of funny. Let's go Forest into tapped land here, assuming that I will end up with things to do with my mana at some point this game. So there's second land drop, so my opponent can play on basic. And so unfortunately, I'm going to have a pair of 2/2s rather than a pair of 3/3s, and it's kind of a big deal. So yeah, nothing to search for here. Go to Punchies. Hit our opponent for 2. Field of Ruin. Cast Living Wish. Don't have a Boseiju currently. We've moved that from the main deck into the sideboard. I can get a Rex Sage though. I think that is better than my other options. Again though, we do have to just worry about dying to the combo at any point though. Dark Ritual plus Forest plus 2 other cards does it this turn. And like, that's a decent number of cards, but it's not super unlikely. What the fuck is that? Players can cast spells and activate abilities only during their own turn. Sure. Let's attempt to deal 4 damage to our opponent here, see how our opponent feels about that. They are good with it. Don't have a great Wasteland target. We'll go Yaw, blow up that ley line. I think I'm going to just cast a Naki, Life from the Loam, to be mana efficient. If I dredge it and I hit something, I can maybe do something cool with Ramunap Excavator on the following turn. We're just trying to 2-turn clock my opponent between our damage and their Dark Confidant. Dark Ritual. Voidwalker's fine. That doesn't block. Voidwalker plus Helm is terrifying. Rex Sage timing's a little rough. I can Life from the Loam for a Boseiju here? Oh, fuck. Douthie Voidwalker. That was dumb. All right, what did I exile? Would it have been an out? It was a fucking Boseiju. Okay, that one is on me. I am dead to my own mistake there, and I deserved that one. GG's. Okay, I don't think this hand is perfect. It has some things going for it. I have a Living Wish to do. I can maybe make some extra land drops. If my opponent's lands are wastelandable, this is solid. We are also a 37 land deck, and every land that we do here just kind of... every land that we draw makes this card that I am likely to resolve on turn 1 on the play better. I don't think I show Wasteland immediately. I think I put Field of Ruin into play, and then a slightly higher portion of the time my opponent actually fetches a non-basic here. So, my opponent playing? Like, do I Yu-Gi-Oh! Heart of the Cards, Living Wish for Fairy Macabre right the fuck now after seeing Bloodstained Mire? Looking at my opponent's results, they are traditionally a Storm player, so I think I am going to Living Wish for Collector Oof. I should maybe wait to do this, as the way that I am playing this out allows this Collector Oof to be taken with a Thoughtseize effect, but Duress and Thoughtseize Living Wish, whereas only Thoughtseize hits Collector Oof. It is not great to see another combo deck on the other side of the table, though. Like, we are very much built to grind out fair blue matchups rather than unfair blue matchups. I'm going to put Lair of the Hydra into play here, because it's just going to enter tapped otherwise. And I can play Wasteland on my turn and take out both of my opponent's lands while also just playing Collector Oof. So we're just hoping for no artifact mana into Storm off here. So take out land 1, take out land 2, and then slam Collector Oof so the artifact mana is not good. Artifact mana is off. I can destroy non-basic lands super easily. Echo of Eons to discard. I believe that it is going to be worth Life from the Loaming these back. I will make a regular old land drop here, activate Lair of the Hydra. Oh wait, is this X1? Yeah, okay. So I can't just send in for damage this turn with that. So I'll attack for 2. My opponent needs ritual-based mana. They don't have it. We steal game 1, which is really, really important if I am expecting to get one of the 2 games that follow up with like Vexing Bauble or Thorn of Amethyst. Like, life's tough. Maze of Iths come out immediately. Drop of Honey needs to come out as well. So this is probably going to mean that some mid-rangey cards that have power and toughness get boarded in. I also have Tabernacles, which aren't great. They hedge against some Empty the Warrens type stuff. Not the end of the world if I keep some of those. My Living Wish is almost always Collector Oof in this matchup. Rarely it will be Fairy instead. Rarely. I don't think I want to board this in. I think I'm okay with boarding this in. If I were the opponent playing against a known Tabernacle deck, I would not be trying to Empty the Warrens. I think I'm just going to board this in as a colorless land to help me cast like Thorn and Six and all this other mid-rangey stuff that I'm boarding in so that I can get this other stuff out. This has no green mana, no anti-storm spell of any kind, easy mulligan here. This has a turn 2 Thorn of Amethyst, which is probably about the best that I am going to get. My opponent is going to 5. We're going to keep this one. I'll probably get rid of Burgeoning here. I'm keeping the Exploration to have a turn 1 play. Although honestly, if my opponent plays a non-basic land here, I will probably just Wasteland and reset the game rather than do anything else. Mox Opal is online. Oh shit, it's just an Echo of Eons. Sure. The game has been restarted. My opponent has a random hand. I think this is favorable for my opponent here. My hand has gotten considerably worse. Storm count is getting towards lethal. I get a turn, but it's not a very valuable turn, unfortunately. My Burgeoning does not do a lot here. The way that I win is probably getting a Thorn in my next 2 draws. So instead of playing Burgeoning, which may or may not give me any value, I am going to Forest and pass and just cycle Tranquil Thicket. My opponent did not play out a land, which maybe means they don't have a land or it is a wastelandable land. And I would rather always, always, always have an extra redraw towards a Thorn. It matters a lot. For the game that I am on the play, Vexing Bauble is real good on turn 1. Storms 2, Mox Opal Storm specifically, also 2. Burning Wish, finding Beseech the Mirror. And then from here, Beseech the Mirror into Gaia's Will is going to be a win. Okay, or we can just Beseech naturally, or Beseech, and final time for Tendrils. And then that ignores things like Fairy. That'll do. All right, so now we're on the play where I can stick a Vexing Bauble before my opponent does relevant things. Not saying that we're mulliganing towards Vexing Bauble, but probably mulliganing to Vexing Bauble. Thorn as a turn 2 play is pretty slow here. Oh boy. I think I should try to get a Vexing Bauble hand. I think it is important enough to interact on turn 1 in this matchup when I am on the play that I should mulligan relatively deeply for a Vexing Bauble hand. I think I'm going to keep going. I am willing to go to 3. On 3, I start thinking about keeping questionable hands. This is great. So I am keeping 1, 2. This is always going back. This is always going back. This is just Collector Oof. I think I just count on my deck to give me another land at some point. My opponent kept 7. So let's see if mulliganing into Oblivion pays off here, or if my opponent just has a bunch of ritual mana and my Vexing Bauble has no real text. It is a Thoughtseize, so I lose my effective copy of Collector Oof. Hey, that's a win condition, baby. So my opponent's current plan is probably cast a Burning Wish, find something that answers Vexing Bauble, win. They'll probably have a couple answers of some kind to Vexing Bauble in their deck, anticipating like Vexing Bauble, Sphere of Resistance type cards. Take out Underground Sea. Do you have a basic? Ooh, no basic. Such avarice. That deck really cannot afford basic lands. It's in so many colors. That is not a deck building mistake this time around. LED getting discarded. Oh, it happened. It happened. I think pass turn. I think I make my opponent deal with that Vexing Bauble, and then I Thorn later once Vexing Bauble is gone. If I don't Thorn, I can also cast something like a Living Wish if I draw it, and that's a huge deal. Mulligan to 3, super paying off though. Like Vexing Bauble has caused my opponent to discard 3 cards cards. If I draw another land, I start playing Thorns. We play that. It ETB's tapped. I can play Thorn into Thorn. We suspect that that is my opponent's only land, but that turns artifact mana back on. Oh, this is so awkward. I think I just accept Thorn into Thorn as a thing that is good against Storm and allow my opponent to play their spells. Not perfect deck building, but we knew that going in. Brainstorm is fine, but hopefully like Thorn plus like Lair of the Hydra, maybe some Wastelands, just ends up being a path to victory. My opponent hits another land here and starts just playing out multiple pieces of artifact mana to make the game like spread out a win attempt over a couple of turns. It can be relatively favorable for them. But if they don't do that, and then this Thorn starts coming down, the artifact cards are sort of priced out in the short term. I cannot cast a 2-mana spell that I draw. Burgeoning doesn't really have text. Attacking for 1 isn't great. I'm going to put a Vexing Bauble into play so that I can cycle a Vexing Bauble. A Wasteland effect right here is so strong right now. Yep, so we're gonna start seeing artifact mana played out. Okay, cool. So Ghost Quarter, take out the Volcanic Island. It's the more useful land. 3-mana Burgeoning now. Cycling Vexing Bauble with this timing isn't great. Attack for 1 isn't great. I'm gonna just take this card out of my hand. Maybe it becomes relevant later. The other thing I can do is just end of opponent's turn, cycle 1 Vexing Bauble. LED. There is an Echo discarded in graveyard relevantly. The 5-mana Echo, it doesn't feel great. I think I'm gonna pass turn and cycle 1 or more Vexing Baubles at the end of my opponent's turn. Like the Vexing Baubles don't have real text while these Thorns are in play. Let's just try to turn these into Strip Mines. If I get rid of the other one, then Echoing Truth in particular becomes really good. I think I am supposed to cycle it though. I have so many Strip Mine effects in my deck. Like, let's find one. Oops, all forests. Lair, Bunchies. That's not my ideal turn. That was 3 bricks in a row on the top of the deck. So we're starting to get scared. It's turn 12. My opponent is still at 13 life, unfortunately. I think we're good with that draw. That's a lot of taxes. So cycling those Vexing Baubles got us closer to that. That's real good. Again, Echoing Truth in particular, a real problem right now. That's not a super commonly played legacy card though. So hopefully we can like Lair of the Hydra bash our way out of this. Come on, Strip Mines though. That's not a Strip Mine at all. Is that worth cycling? That's probably still worth cycling. That's probably still worth cycling. That costs a gajillion mana. This costs 5 mana. It represents a Collector Oof, which is insane. This is X equals 1, Lair of the Hydra, or the tiniest little punchy. My opponent has gotten rid of a Thoughtseize. The hand is not the zone that matters here. It is a Ghost Quarter effect. I think we are still interested in attacking mana here. We know our opponent does not have basics left. We'll let the phases change, and we are looking to just end the game next turn with Collector Oof. So 5 mana Living Wish, Boseiju on one of them. I will say yes, I will pick up a forest. There are still 2 Thorn effects in play. This is my opponent's big turn. They could Thoughtseize me, take this Collector Oof, a loss further down. Oh, they're trying to go. Dark Ritual, Dark Ritual. That is not netting mana, that is just building Storm. Are they going to Echo of Eons to make me shuffle the Collector Oof? They are. So that is an Okay. Everyone be cool. Burgeoning. Put in a Wasteland. Promox occurs. Oh, that's the Gaia's Will. That's not great. End of turn. We'll cycle this. Arrakis. Sure. Wasteland Bayou. Ghost Quarter. Boseiju. Opponent has no lands remaining. Cast Collector Oof. Okay, that's enough. Our opponent has tapped out. We take down the Storm Menace. Well, that was a really fun league. I enjoyed that a lot. I am sad that Living Wish for Lumra was not a correct line in this league. It was really fun doing that last time around. We played against a little bit more combo this time around. And in my video that I released for you all on Tuesday, I said that I was expecting a small uptick of things like Storm combo. And we did see that in this league. As far as the deck building goes, really thought I had a 4th Maze of Ith in the deck. My bad on that one. There should either be a 4th Maze of Ith in the main deck or in the sideboard. I think it belongs within the main deck. Generally speaking, I give this deck a thumbs up. You can maybe go down a land or a burgeoning if you want to play a couple more cards like Winding Way that just give you some form of card advantage. I did not really miss the cave. I'm blanking on its name right now because it's late, but I did not miss the cave that lets you pay 2 mana, or that taps for 2 mana for things like Demolition Field or Urza's Saga. I did not think about that card a single time throughout the entire league, which is probably an indication that it was not necessary within the deck, and Demolition Field and Field of Ruin were still perfectly reasonable cards without that. So I'm going to give this deck a thumbs up. This was very fun to play once again. Is it the most competitive thing in the world? Probably not, but if you want to have some fun, specifically on Magic Online where these things are like pennies, I think this is a very cool deck to play. If you have something like a proxy friendly FNM, I would give this deck a huge thumbs up for those purposes. Maybe there's a way that you can like split your sideboard cards for this slot in a way that doesn't interact with Vexing Bauble. In the few minutes that I spent retuning this deck list, I couldn't think about what exactly that would be that covers all of the matchup spreads. Like, you could play something like, you know, Grafdigger's Cage or Unlicensed Hearse that gets some of it, but probably not all of it. Like you could just choose to kind of lose out versus some stuff. Like the Grafdigger's Cage is going to be perfectly fine against like some Beseech lines, the Gaia's Will sort of stuff, Past in Flame sort of stuff, but doesn't do as much versus ritual-based stuff. Or you could do something like add a color to this deck list, like get the white back in there in some capacity to Deafening Silence. Just my gut is telling me that given how many colorless lands are in this deck, supporting that second color or turn 1 white mana mathematically probably isn't going to work out super well. But yeah, this was great, folks. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day. Should you need some cards, consider checking out toamagic.com using promo code ThrabenU to let them know that I sent you. All right, I hope you are enjoying post-Grief Legacy content. See ya.